Brother asked me for money. When I refused, he broke into my house, and my parents said I should let it go because he is family. But I decided enough is enough and called the cops. Look, I 35 meters need to get this off my chest, and it's gonna be a long one. My relationship with my brother Jake, 37M, is complicated as hell. And what just happened made everything so much worse. We're complete opposites, always have been. Back in school, I was that nerdy kid who'd spend lunch breaks in the computer lab, while Jake was out there getting suspended for putting fireworks in the school toilets. Mom and Dad kept saying he'd grow out of it. But he didn't. Here's the thing about Jake. He's got a rap sheet longer than my grocery list. I'm not even exaggerating. Last time I checked, he'd been arrested like 6 times. There's always something: getting into fights outside bars, passing out drunk at the mall, getting caught with drugs in his car. Our family is constantly cleaning up his mess. Every other month someone's getting a call at 3 a.m. to pick him up from the police station. And this dude actually brags about it to his friends like it's something to be proud of. Meanwhile, I'm basically the most boring person you'll ever meet. And Jake never lets me forget it. Every time we're together, he's got something to say about how I need to live a little. His favorite line is, "Life isn't worth living if you don't get into a bit of trouble once in a while." Like, dude, I'm not gonna trash my career just to prove I'm not boring. My idea of a wild night is ordering dessert after dinner, or B, staying up late playing video games with my friends. Jake thinks that's pathetic. But whatever. I work as a systems engineer dealing with satellite communications. Yeah, I know. Total nerd alert. But it's actually pretty cool and I make good money doing it. The catch is I need a security clearance. For all the government contract stuff we handle, they check everything about me every few years, and I mean everything. My record's so clean it squeaks. No parking tickets, no noise complaints, nothing. I've worked my ass off to get where I am. And I'm not about to mess that up. Jake and I basically live in different worlds now. He's not a bad guy deep down and I don't hate him, or anything. But every time we hang out, something crazy happens. Last Christmas, he tried to start a fight with our neighbor over a parking spot. The time before that, he almost got arrested at my company picnic. It's exhausting having to be on high alert whenever he's around, so I just started avoiding him. It's easier that way. The final straw came after this stupid incident at a bar downtown. Some random guy accidentally bumped into Jake while walking past, and Jake just lost it. Started screaming in the guy's face about respect, pushed him into a table. I had to literally drag him out of there before the cops showed up. Instead of being grateful, he was pissed at me for ruining his fun. That's when I knew I was done playing babysitter to a 37-year-old man who acts like an angry teenager. My parents are just as bad, honestly. They've been making excuses for Jake since we were kids. First it was boys will be boys, then he's just going through a phase, and now it's always he just needs one more chance. They've spent thousands bailing him out and paying for lawyers. He can't keep a job because he either picks fights with customers or gets caught stealing from the register. Last month, he got fired from McDonald's for threatening his 19-year-old supervisor. Guess who had to pick him up from the police station? Me. My parents completely lost it when I finally stepped back from Jake's drama. Mom started calling me stuck up because I bought a nice house and actually have a career. Dad keeps saying I'm abandoning the family. Like somehow, I'm the bad guy for not wanting to enable a grown man who acts like a criminal. Every family dinner turns into a guilt trip about how I should be doing more to help Jake. They don't get that I'm trying to protect myself. One wrong move and I could lose everything I've worked for. I tried sitting down with my parents to explain why I was stepping back. Told them straight up that Jake was headed for serious trouble. It's only a matter of time before he robs the wrong store or punches the wrong guy, and then what? But they completely shut down when I called him what he is, a criminal. That was pretty much the end of our relationship. We still text on holidays and birthdays, but that's about it. It sucks not having my parents around anymore. But I'm not going to let them make me feel bad for protecting myself. Jake's always hitting me up for cash, usually small stuff like $20 for gas or $50 for groceries. I know I probably shouldn't, but sometimes I give it to him. Maybe it's leftover guilt from growing up together. Or maybe I just want him to leave me alone. Either way, it's become this weird routine between us. Then last week Jake shows up at my house out of nowhere. Starts talking about how he needs $2,000, like right now when I asked what for. He got all weird about it. Kept changing the subject, wouldn't look me in the eye. Just kept saying he really needed it, and I was the only one who could help. Real sketchy stuff. I was actually hoping this would be different. Like maybe he'd say he needed the money for some online classes, or to fix up his car for Uber. If he'd shown any sign of trying to get his life together, I would have given him way more than $2,000. Hell, I'd have helped him with a whole career change if he wanted. That's all I've ever wanted, to see my brother get his shit together and start acting like an adult. The whole thing started feeling really sketchy. Jake couldn't give me one straight answer about what he needed $2,000 for. No way, I was getting mixed up in whatever illegal stuff he was planning. With my security clearance and everything, I can't risk being connected to anything shady. So I told him flat out, no explanation. No money, simple as that. Jake completely lost it. Started going on about how I care more about my job than family. Like I'm supposed to risk my entire career just because we share DNA. I tried explaining that I actually give a damn about him and don't want him getting into more trouble. The last thing I need is my money funding his next drug deal, or gambling debt, or whatever other mess he's gotten himself into. This time that's when he really went off. Started screaming about how I think I'm better than him because I've got a good job. Pulled out his favorite excuse about how I was born smart and everything's been easy for me. It's the same BS he's been saying since high school, whenever anyone tries to get him to straighten up. According to Jake, the universe is against him and nothing's ever his fault. I'm so tired of that born smart garbage. We went to the same schools, had the same teachers, same everything. The difference is I busted my ass studying while he was out getting drunk. Even now I spend my weekends learning new programming languages and taking online courses to stay current in my field. Nobody handed me anything. I work for every bit of what I have. When I pointed this out, Jake just got even madder. That's when I lost my cool too. I was just so done with his victim mentality. Started yelling about how everything's always someone else's problem. If he gets fired, it's because his boss is a jerk. If he gets arrested, it's because the cops are out to get him. If he's broke, it's because mom and dad didn't help enough. I told him straight up that his life was a mess because he refuses to take responsibility for anything. Maybe I shouldn't have gone off like that, but I was just so frustrated. The look on Jake's face scared me for a second. His hands were balled into fists, and I honestly thought he was about to take a swing at me. Instead, he just stormed out and slammed my door. I figured he'd cool off after a few days like usual, then show up again next time he needed money or a ride somewhere. That's how it always went with Jake. But something was different this time. A few days later, I went for a quick bike ride to the store around 9 p.m. Just needed to grab some stuff for dinner and get some exercise. I wasn't even gone an hour. When I got back, something just felt wrong. You know that feeling when something's not quite right, but you can't put your finger on it. Then it hit me, my living room lights were on. I'm super careful about stuff like that. Always double check everything before leaving. I specifically remembered turning them off before going out. My stomach dropped as I stood there in my own house, realizing someone had been inside while I was gone. At first glance, nothing major seemed stolen. My TV and PS5 were still sitting there in the living room. All my other expensive stuff looked untouched too. For a minute, I thought maybe I was just being paranoid about the lights. Then I went to check my bedroom, and that's when I knew for sure someone had been in here. My desk drawers were a mess. Most people probably wouldn't notice, but I'm super OCD about keeping everything organized. Someone had definitely gone through all my stuff. Papers were shuffled around, desk organizers were moved, and the drawers weren't even closed properly. The more I looked around, the more obvious it became that someone had searched my entire bedroom. I was freaking out pretty bad at this point. Some stranger had just walked into my house and gone through my personal stuff. I grabbed my phone to call the police, but then remembered something that might help. My Tesla was parked in the driveway all night with Sentry mode on. I've been meaning to install security cameras in the house, but kept putting it off. Maybe my car caught something. Holy shit, did it ever. I pulled the flash drive from my car and checked the footage on my computer. The camera caught everything. This guy walking up my driveway, trying to open my car door like an idiot, and then heading toward my house. Best part, he hadn't pulled his mask down yet when he checked my car. It was like watching one of those dumb criminal videos. Except this one starred my own brother. Jake's face was clear as day on my screen. You know your life's messed up when you catch your brother breaking into your house and you're not even shocked, just disappointed. Like watching a train wreck you saw coming miles away. On paper it's simple. Someone breaks into your house, you call the cops, this wasn't some random burglar. It was Jake, the same guy who used to stick up for me when kids picked on me in middle school, but he also just violated my home, the one place I'm supposed to feel safe. I sat there for a long time staring at that video, trying to figure out what to do. I decided to check what was missing first. Walked through the whole house making a list. He didn't take any of the obvious stuff like my TV or PlayStation. Instead, he grabbed whatever cash he could find and some smaller, valuable things. The real kick in the teeth was what he chose to steal. He took 2 of my expensive watches and my favorite custom mechanical keyboard. The watches hurt, but the keyboard really pissed me off. I build these things myself. Spend weeks picking out the perfect switches, keycaps, everything. This particular one cost me $500 in parts alone, not counting all the time I put into it. It's basically art to me, and Jake probably just grabbed it, thinking he could pawn it for quick cash. I figured I'd tried talking to him before going nuclear with the police. Maybe there was still a chance to handle this like adults. I called him up, probably sounding more angry than I should have. But come on, my own brother just robbed me. The conversation started with me asking, "Did you break into my house, you piece of crap?" Jake played dumb right away. "What are you talking about?" Like I was some idiot who wouldn't have proof. Classic Jake move, deny everything until you can anymore. I've watched him pull the same routine with our parents since we were kids. That's when I told him about having him on video, trying to break into my Tesla. Before he hit the house, the line went quiet for a minute. I could practically hear him trying to figure out if I was bluffing. Then he must have remembered my car, his cameras, because he finally gave up the act. Want to hear his genius explanation for breaking into my house? Because I wouldn't just give him the $2,000 when he asked for it earlier. That's it, that was his entire justification for burglarizing his own brother's home. Like somehow not giving him money made it okay for him to rob me. I told him he'd reached a new level of stupid, even for him. But Jake just started screaming about how this was all my fault. According to his twisted logic, I forced him to break in by not handing over my money, like a good brother should. He actually tried to make me feel guilty about getting robbed by my own brother. The conversation just kept going in circles. Jake wouldn't accept that breaking into someone's house is wrong, even if that someone is your brother who wouldn't give you money. He kept twisting everything around, trying to make me the bad guy. After about 20 minutes of this nonsense, I'd had enough. Told him straight up, either bring back my stuff by tomorrow morning, or I'm calling the police. You know what this idiot did? He laughed, actually laughed. Said there's no way I'd call the cops over just a few things, because we're family. When I repeated that he had until morning, he just made this dismissive noise and hung up on me. The whole conversation just showed how little he respects me or my boundaries. So now I'm sitting here at 1 a.m. trying to figure out what to do. My own brother broke into my house, stole my stuff, and then had the nerve to blame me for it. I don't even feel comfortable sleeping tonight. Keeps hitting me that he could just come back whenever he wants. But if I call the police, it'll destroy what's left of our family. Jake's got priors, so he'd probably do serious time. Plus my parents would never forgive me. They'd probably take his side like they always do. Update 1. So I finally made my decision. Not gonna lie, it really hurts. But I know I did the right thing. I tried everything possible to handle this without getting the police involved, but my family didn't leave me much choice. Right after everything went down that night, I called my parents. Looking back now, I don't know what I expected. Maybe I thought they'd finally see how far Jake had gone this time, and they'd realize their precious boy had crossed a serious line by breaking into his own brother's house. Nope, they jumped straight to defending him, just like they always do. Dad started in with his usual family loyalty speech. We need to look out for each other, he said, like I was the one who did something wrong according to him. I should have just handed over the $2,000 when Jake asked for it. He actually tried to justify the break-in, saying Jake must have been desperate and had no other choice, like being desperate makes burglary okay. Mom wasn't any better. She tried to minimize what happened, saying Jake only took a few small things, so I should just let it go. When I explained that he stole expensive watches and my custom keyboard that I spent months building, she came up with an even crazier idea. I should give Jake the $2,000 and he'd return my stuff. That's right, my own mother suggested I should pay ransom to my brother for my own belongings. When I asked Mom if she was seriously suggesting I pay ransom to my own brother for stuff he stole from me, she just started mumbling about family sticking together. Couldn't even give me a straight answer, because I think even she knew how ridiculous it sounded. The more we talked, the more it became clear that my parents were completely useless in this situation. They'd already decided I was the bad guy for not giving Jake money whenever he demanded it. According to them, getting robbed by my own brother was somehow less important than keeping the peace in the family. They couldn't understand why I was upset about being burglarized. Finally, I'd had enough of their enabling BS. Told them straight up that if they didn't get Jake to return my stuff by morning, I was calling the police. No more threats, no more discussions. Just facts. Either my stuff comes back or I'm pressing charges. That's when they really lost it. Dad started shouting about how I was heartless, saying I destroyed Jake's life over just a few things. Like I was the one who broke into someone's house and stole their stuff. I just told him Jake had already wrecked his own life with his choices, and I wasn't going to let him drag me down with him. Then I hung up because I couldn't take any more of their guilt trips. Next morning came and nothing had changed. No text, no call. No returned items. I decided to give Jake one final chance and called him. You know what this idiot did? He laughed, actually laughed, and said, "You won't call the police." That's when everything clicked into place. Jake wasn't worried about getting caught on camera or anything because he didn't think I had it in me to actually do anything about it. He was counting on me, being the same pushover who used to cover for him when we were kids, who'd pick him up at 3 a.m. from whatever bar he got kicked out of, who'd always clean up his messes. In his mind, I was still that guy who'd do anything to keep the peace. That's the moment I knew I had to call the cops. Jake was 37 years old, still acting like a teenager who could do whatever he wanted without consequences. If I let this slide, I'd be stuck bailing him out, making excuses for him until one of us died. Nothing was ever going to change unless someone finally stood up to him. So I picked up the phone and did it. Called the police, reported the break-in. They came over pretty quick. I showed them everything: the damaged window, the Tesla footage of him trying my car door before breaking in. All of it. The officer said it was an open and shut case. Clear evidence of breaking and entering, plus theft. They took my statement and said they'd move forward with arresting Jake. Watching the police write up their report, I had mixed feelings. I felt guilty about turning in my own brother. But there was also this weight lifting off my shoulders. For the first time in his life, Jake was actually going to face real consequences for his actions. I tried giving him an out, tried handling it within the family, but he just laughed it off. Later that evening, all hell broke loose. Jake had called our parents from jail after getting arrested. Dad completely lost it on the phone, screaming about how I was destroying the family and ruining Jake's precious life. Mom was just sobbing in the background, like I was the one who'd committed a crime. I just told Dad straight up that I wasn't the one who ruined Jake's life. He'd done that himself with plenty of help from them, enabling his behavior for 37 years. Then I hung up because what else was there to say? They'd made their choice a long time ago, picking Jake's side no matter what he did. Turns out Dad was right about one thing. The courts hammered Jake hard. He already had a record and the evidence against him was rock solid. I had to testify at his trial and submit the Tesla footage. They charged him with breaking and entering, plus felony theft because of how much the stolen stuff was worth. Really different from all those times Mom and Dad had bailed him out of trouble. The charges were serious enough that Jake was looking at real prison time. Instead of letting him use a public defender, my parents emptied their retirement savings to hire some lawyer. I tried telling them they were wasting their money. The evidence was clear as day. But they wouldn't listen, just like they hadn't listened for the past 37 years. The whole trial was a nightmare. My parents spent every day telling anyone who'd listen what a terrible person I was for throwing my brother's life away. After weeks of hearing this BS, I finally told them they were the ones who ruined Jake's life. By being garbage parents who never taught him about consequences, that they'd failed both their kids, Jake by enabling him and me by expecting me to clean up their mess. Mom started crying when I said they were responsible for Jake ending up in prison. Harsh maybe. But I wasn't wrong. They had one last chance to step up. His parents, they could have told Jake he'd gone too far this time, could have made him return my stuff and get help. Instead they defended him breaking into my house and stealing from me. Well, turns out the judge wasn't as understanding as they were. I haven't visited Jake in prison. What's the point according to our parents? He says this is all my fault. Maybe prison will teach him something about taking responsibility for his actions. But I'm not holding my breath. At least with him locked up, I don't have to worry about him showing up in my house anymore. My parents have completely cut contact with me. Honestly, good riddance. Yeah, it sucks that this is how things ended up. But I'm done feeling guilty about it. I spent years trying to help Jake while protecting myself. And all it got me was robbed and blamed. Sometimes you have to let toxic family members face the consequences of their actions. Even when it hurts, I'm not responsible for fixing my brother's life. And I'm definitely not responsible for my parents' failures.